Victoria is preparing to restart its hotel quarantine program, but who will end up paying? The bills for hotel quarantine have been issued since July last year, but around the country, millions of dollars remain outstanding, with some refusing to pay.
That, my friends, is what I'm going to do with my bill. I'll be challenging the bill, but I won't be paying it.
It's the 2-week hotel stay no one wants to pay for.
I'm just refusing to do it.
All the while, the debt from the unpaid bills is soaring into the millions.
Ultimately, it's going to be the taxpayer who is going to pay for this in one way or form.
The government should just do the right thing, suck it up.
The Australian government closed our borders 12 months ago, forcing all returning travellers into 2 weeks of hotel isolation. But since July, those coming home have had to foot the bill themselves. People like Simon Michalak, who was working in Finland when COVID hit.
And I just thought it would pass over and we'd get back to work.
As he remained stood down from his teaching job, Simon started to get sick due to a pre-existing health issue. He spent 6 months in a foreign hospital.
Obviously, there are no airfares available. They're very expensive, and Australia's borders were closed. It was just really difficult to get back.
He was eventually able to fly home via Tokyo in November, completing 2 weeks quarantine in Sydney, which Simon claims was a disaster.
I don't think they took it seriously at all. I think it needs to be a universal thing, with consideration for people's healthcare and their well-being.
Simon says due to his health issues, the food was completely inadequate, causing his blood sugar levels to soar. Now he's refusing to pay the $3,000 bill.
I believe that the Commonwealth is ultimately responsible for the bill.
Under the federal government's Biosecurity Act, it states the Commonwealth is liable to pay for reasonable expenses incurred by an individual in complying with a biosecurity measure. Simon says that's clear as crystal. Travellers shouldn't have to pay.
I don't know about you, I speak English as my first language, and I think that's pretty clear. This is exactly what it says.
He's now been issued a payment reminder for his bill, but isn't budging.
I feel sorry for all the Australians who have, received the bill and have paid it, because quite frankly, I think they should be refunded.
And he's not the only one protesting. The New South Wales government has issued more than $107 million in quarantine bills since July. Of those, more than half have been paid or waived, but 1 in 3 has not, with more than $28 million still owing. In Victoria, millions is owed because the government has only just started sending out invoices, while in Queensland, 1/4 of people are yet to pay, leaving the state $13 million out of pocket. But why should travellers pay their bills when some states are also refusing to pay? Western Australia and Queensland have now refused to cover the costs of their residents who quarantined in Sydney at the start of the pandemic.
I am outraged to table an invoice from the New South Wales government for $30 million to pay for their hotel quarantine.
The Queensland government says it won't pay until the federal government supports its push for regional quarantine. The Deputy Premier, Stephen Miles, even going as far as ripping up the bill in a social media stunt. That's despite the fact the nation's treasurers agreed at a meeting last year to cover the cost. New South Wales Treasurer Dominic Perrottet.
There was an agreement between all the treasurers, and that's clear on the basis that most international flights would come into Sydney.
I shan't be paying the bill, and I'll be doing what the Queensland government did and tore it up.
Pensioner Bob Ford was forced into quarantine after travelling from regional Victoria to Queensland to visit his daughter.
I'm an 87-year-old man. I'm not a shrinking violet, but I mean, it is intimidating.
The grandfather thought he was fine to travel with his border pass, but was told on arrival because he caught public transport to the airport, he was deemed a risk.
Being penned up in somewhere where you're not supposed to be. I've never been in jail, I've never been in anything like that. That's very intimidating.
Bob was released after 5 days when restrictions in Melbourne lifted.
I was held illegally and I'm going to take legal advice on it. I'm going to pursue that.
What we're seeing here is a game of constitutional musical chairs, and the last person standing, of course, is always the taxpayer.
Lawyer Bill Potts believes while the states and federal government continue to argue, a landmark court case is inevitable.
I think there's going to be a lot of work for debt collectors. I rather suspect that the courts may be asked the ultimate question as to who in fact gets to pay for all the fun.
In the end, it's a lose-lose situation. Someone has to pay, and if it's not the travellers, it's the taxpayer.
I think if people get educated and they learn about these rules, I think there will be a bit of a revolt.
Victoria's hotel quarantine program does get underway again on the 8th of April when international flights will be allowed back into the state. The program was suspended in early February as part of the third lockdown.